Hello and welcome to Inside Sport. In this video we're going to summarise the game that's just finished between the New Zealand All Blacks and the Argentinian Los Pumas in Mendoza, Argentina. So welcome back to my video, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you very much for following my channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the old subscribe button and you'll be updated every time I post a video. I'm going to be doing all the Rugby Championship this year as well as the Rugby World Cup, as many games as I possibly can, so stay here and stay tuned for all that. Okay, so the All Blacks headed off to Argentina this week to play the second game in this year's Rugby Championship. We had the Springboks thrashing Australia in the first game. So what was going to happen in the second game? Well, the kickoff started in front of a sellout crowd in Mendoza. It's only the second time the All Blacks have been there. The last time was in 1991. And there was a lot of anticipation in this game, particularly for us Kiwis, because we didn't know what was going to happen. So a really interesting game, this one, and the All Blacks with their selection. First of all, Damian McKenzie coming in at number 10, and Richie Mo'unga starting off on the bench, Beauden Barrett back to fullback, and they were the main positional anomalies that everybody was looking at in this particular game and how that would pan out. Well, in the first minute of the game, every New Zealander was probably thinking, oh my goodness, what are we doing? And we just simply didn't try to get rid of the ball into touch fast enough and clear the ball away. Bit of stupid play actually, and got caught behind our own goal line. Damian McKenzie was at the centre of all that, so I'm sure a lot of people were thinking, what's going on here? But really, other than that, that was the blemish, particularly in the first half for the All Blacks. And after they got through that moment, they started dominating pretty much straight away. And this was a big surprise to me in particular, because I thought the Argentinians were going to turn up a little bit more in this particular game in the first 20 minutes. So once the All Blacks got over that little hump in the first minute, they put the pressure on Argentina straight away and started running the ball, putting it out wide. And Ricky Ioane made a fantastic break down the field, passed it inside to Dan Coles, who went over for the All Blacks' first try after 5 minutes. So there was a little bit of reprieve, I think, in terms of the Argentinian pressure there in the first minute. Everybody probably thought, well, this is going to be a contest. And then all of a sudden, against that run of play, the All Blacks started to put some pressure on straight away to the Argentinians, and their defence simply didn't hold. As I said, Ioane made a fantastic break, passed it out to Dan Coles, and he went in for a try. And it really set up a good period of play for the All Blacks and for Dan Coles. But as the game started to progress a little bit further, it became very obvious that the All Blacks were highly energised, highly motivated, and they wanted to spread the ball wide in this particular game. It was 5-0 after 5 minutes. Damian McKenzie missing with the conversion attempt from pretty much out in front, and I'll go and talk about Damian McKenzie's kicking a little bit later on in this video. We didn't have to wait long though before the All Blacks struck again and again through dominant mauling and clearing out the ball straight away, bringing their inside backs in. Geordie Barrett started getting into the game pretty early on and breaking the line, and also having very quick turnover as well from the great direct hits that he was taking up the middle. So after 10 minutes, we had Adi Savia going over for a try for the All Blacks after, again, they put a lot of pressure on the Argentinians. Again, another great passage of play, and it wasn't long before the All Blacks were over again, this time Geordie Barrett getting rewarded for a great move that started off in the forwards and then went out through the backs. And before we knew it, it was 17 points to 0. This time McKenzie got the conversion over. So one was to think, well, this game was pretty much getting out of sight for Argentina. Were they being able to make a comeback at all in this match? But the All Blacks kept putting the screw on as the game unfolded. What was impressive from the All Blacks was their drive in their forwards. The clean out was very fast and accurate, and they were getting the ball out to a very shallow running Damian McKenzie, who was hitting the line very flat, and then he was setting up his outside runners, both Ioane and Geordie Barrett, as they were coming in on different angles. This made it incredibly difficult for the Argentinians to defend against. In the 28th minute, Ioane actually got over for a try himself, took the score to 22 points to 0, and Damian McKenzie slotted that goal to take us out to 24-0. There was no answers coming from Argentina. The All Blacks were getting all of the possession, both from all the set pieces of play. Their scrum was looking fantastic. Their line-out wins were strong, and they were even snatching some line-out ball off the opposition at that stage. It was around about this time of the match that the Australian referee, Angus Gardner, started warning the Argentinian players from their infringing. The forwards were starting to make some late hits, and also they were angling in on the wrong side of the maul and getting caught a number of times. So we saw successive penalties against the Argentinian forwards during that period of play. Lord was having a great game in the forwards for the Kiwis. He was in it a lot for this game, and he was doing very, very well. This is a guy that only played 120 minutes of rugby for the season so far. He's come in as an understudy to Retallick and Whitelock, and he really stood up in that first half, I thought, and played extremely well. The All Blacks kept the pressure on, and it was just before half-time in the 38th minute that Aaron Smith darted through a gap close to the maul and went over untouched. There was a question mark on it for a minute to see whether one of the Argentinian players were impeded by the referee. The referee said no, and the try was allowed. So the All Blacks went over with 2 minutes to go before half-time, and the conversion was slotted as well. So the All Blacks went in at 31 points to 0. That first half display was one of the best I've seen from the All Blacks in a long time, considering that they've travelled all the way to Argentina this week. It's not easy going to that place and playing where they were in Mendoza in front of what had been a expecting Argentinian team. You know, everybody that I was talking to during the week thought this was going to be a really, really close battle, and that Argentina was going to use this momentum they'd got from beating the All Blacks last year to really turn up and give the All Blacks a tough game today. But that first half was just extraordinarily good from the All Blacks, and pretty much like what South Africa had done to the Australians in the game before, we saw that potential domination by the All Blacks happen in the first half of this game. So the players went into the sheds 31 points to 0 to the All Blacks at half-time. I'm sure Michael Cheika and his coaching team had a few words to say to the Argentinians. I think the best way to approach the second half of this game from Cheika would have been to say to the guys, forget that, you can't do anything to change that, and come out and try and win the second half. Now obviously with such a dominating first half, the All Blacks were going to ring the changes in the second half and give some of the bench, if not all the bench, a bit of a run in this game. It was going to be interesting to see how long it was before Moanga came on. But at the start of the second half, things did turn around, and the Argentinian team really stepped up. They forced a lot of penalties against the All Blacks, and the run of play started to change a little bit. Argentina got a little bit into the game, and they started spreading the All Blacks pretty wide. But I was impressed by the All Black defence. They were letting the Argentinians move wide. They were following them across the field, drifting across the field, and they were hitting them pretty hard with their defence. And I thought players like Sam Cane and Adi Savia really stepped up, had an amazing game, both of those guys, cleaning out the ball, staying well in the ruck, and just being, you know, in prime condition at the maul and the break it down situation. But the Argentinians, after 11 minutes into the second half, they got what they deserved. They got a try. Sordoni went over for a try and put a little bit of respect into the scoreboard. We were 52 minutes into the game, and we were thinking, well, is this the Argentinian comeback? But it only lasted a couple of minutes before the All Blacks broke clear again. A fantastic move out through the back line from a set piece, and Beauden Barrett went over for a try on the left-hand side of the field, the way the All Blacks were facing. It was a tremendous try. It was set up from the set piece of play. The All Blacks put it throughout the entire back line, and Beauden Barrett was able to score down the other end of the field. So they would have been really happy with the way that they bounced back from the Argentinian resurgence, and they really snuffed out any hope that Argentina had at that stage of coming back into this match, I thought. McKenzie missed another kick, and he didn't have his kicking boots on today. The commentators were saying that it's a difficult place to kick, but I don't think Damien McKenzie will be happy at all with his kicking percentages today, and I'm going to talk about his overall performance a little bit later in this video. So the All Blacks really nailed the game there, I think, with that try from Beauden Barrett, and there was no hope for Argentina to get back into the game. And it was a chase then for both teams as they moved their players off the bench onto the field and started emptying the benches. So we saw basically a whole new look game as a lot of new players came into the game. think the game fell away a little bit then, particularly from the All Blacks side. They had a lot of new combinations coming in. Richie Mo'unga came in, and we saw those changes in the back line for the All Blacks that were expected. Changes were made. We started seeing the penalties starting to tally up on the All Blacks side, and I think one of the things that happens in a match like this, when that happens, when you have such a dominant first half from a group of players, then you change that group of players and a new group come in. They just find it hard to keep that momentum going the same. So we saw a lot of infringements from the All Blacks in the second half. The penalty count started going up, and the Argentinians started playing much better. So we have to give credit where credit's due, and they really started to lift their game. They started to run the ball more wider, but I just thought they were lacking strategically in their decision making. Some of the times where they should have kicked, they passed, and when they should have passed, they kicked. And a few different options. When they had an opportunity to go through a gap, they kept the ball. They didn't try to pass it out wide. And I think they might have been better off if they had strategically made different decisions. And I know this is something that Michael Cheika has been trying to drill into the Argentinian team, to be able to make the right decision in those split-second moments of the game that are critically important. So a little bit of work for the Argentinians still to do in that area. So the tight tussle continued throughout most of the second half, with no real domination coming from the All Blacks like they had in the first half. We got to the 76th minute, and Narawa went over for a fantastic try in the corner. This guy is a really good finisher, and he showed that with his first test try for the All Blacks on his debut. So a fantastic way to cap off the game for him. The All Blacks then went out to 41 points to 5. In the dying minutes of the game, Creevy, the hooker and previous captain of the team, came on for Argentina. His 98th cap. He's the most capped player in Argentina. And lo and behold, in the last minute of the game, he scored a try under the post, which was converted. In the first half, domination by the All Blacks set up this game, no doubt about it. The second half, a lot better by the Argentinians. I think they really showed up. Cheika must have told them to start again, and they did that. And I think they've got something there now that they can work on for next week. So it's going to be a really interesting week next week. We've got the Springboks travelling to New Zealand. They're going to be playing the All Blacks at Mount Smart Stadium in Auckland. And we've got Argentina going to Australia to play the Wallabies. So those two teams are going to be very much after a win next week, after their big losses this weekend. And I think the All Blacks and South Africa game now, if it didn't already have some spice to it, it's going to have a lot more spice, because obviously the team that's going to win this one could take out the Rugby Championship this year, that's for sure. So a really great performance by the All Blacks today. I think Ian Foster, Jason Ryan and Joe Smith will be very happy with what they saw on the pitch. A few things I think to work on. I didn't like the way that they fell off a little bit in the second half. I think we need to have that reserve group coming on and keeping the momentum going. I think that's going to be a really critical factor in the World Cup. Let me know what you think of that. Do you think that's going to be important for all teams? When they empty their benches, are they going to have to keep that momentum going in tight situations? And I would have thought the All Blacks might have kicked on a little bit more in the second half today and scored a few more points, even though they brought on those changes midway through the second half. In saying that though, Argentina did step up and played better in the second half. So I think there was a bit of a compromise on that comment in terms of Argentina doing their thing to step up, the All Blacks falling off the pace a bit, and those players that did come on didn't carry on the same kind of momentum. So did the Damian McKenzie experiment work or not? I have to say, if I'm going to be really critical in this match as a Kiwi, I'll say that I didn't really think McKenzie's performance was that good. And I think Mo'unga is going to slot back in there to number 10 again next week against South Africa, no doubt about that. Whether McKenzie goes to fullback and Beauden Barrett goes off the bench, we'll have to wait and see. But I think, one, his kicking was off today, and a couple of decisions he made, particularly in that first minute, I think were a little bit lazy, and he really wasn't showing that high level of rugby intellect we need to have at this level for players to be successful. And if we looked at his South African counterpart today and the way that he controlled the game, managed the game, both in kicking and running, he was a standout fly half for me for this first weekend of the Rugby Championship. So McKenzie, I think a little bit of a question mark there still. He just doesn't seem to be able to reach that very, very high standard that he does in Super Rugby. but let's see what Foster and the team decide to do next week. Overall, I think the All Blacks had a fantastic game. It was a good starter for them. A lot of the cobwebs and nerves that they probably had going into this game were blown away. And I think that the forward selection got some terrific forwards there at the moment, and we need to have those terrific forwards, because from what we saw today from South Africa, they're going to be bringing it to the All Blacks next week, and I think that forward battle is going to be really, really enticing. Standouts for me today, I think Josh Lord had a fantastic game at lock for the All Blacks. I think Sam Cane had a blinder, and Ardie Savea doesn't really never turn up, does he, Ardie, for the All Blacks? Had a really good game. Shannon Frizzell, I thought, had a really good game as well until he got subbed off in the second half, doing everything right in the line out and the clean outs and looking hungry to get the ball, which I think he had to do today to show his colours over there. Aaron Smith had a great game as well. I thought he was strong. Geordie Barrett was the man of the match, selected by the Argentinian television network today. He had a fantastic game, got a pretty bad bleeding nose towards the end of the game. Hope he cleans up all right from that one, but he had a really strong game both in defence and also in breaking the line. I thought he played really, really well. Ioane as well was great in the backs today, scoring a try, but also some other decisive breaks, setting up the man both inside and out of him. So overall, a really strong All Black performance. I think the whole crew will be happy to get on that plane and take that flight back to Auckland now and prepare themselves for what is going to be a gigantic battle against the Springboks. You're going to be able to get all the analysis of that game and the preview for that game here on my Inside Sport channel. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification, and I'll let you know when those videos are going to be dropping. So there we go. The first round weekend of the Rugby Championship is done and dusted. We had the Springboks 43 points to 10 winners over the Australian Wallabies this afternoon, and New Zealand All Blacks against Argentinian Los Pumas 41 points to 10. So pretty big scores in both of those games, and both Australian coaches, Michael Cheika and Eddie Jones, will be going away scratching their heads a little bit because they've only got 7 days to turn this around, and there's only a few matches left for all of these teams now before they head into the World Cup. So the All Blacks in South Africa, I'm sure, have been wanting to keep the momentum going. Argentina and the Wallabies are going to be searching for answers, and they're going to have to deliver next week. So that game between the Wallabies and Argentina next week is going to be a really interesting game to see who steps up and performs, because one team's going to be left with 0 wins so far in this championship. Okay, that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed the video again. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you again soon here on Inside Sport. Until then, keep enjoying your rugby.